Hello, and welcome back to Bikes, Beers, and Burritos with Performance Bicycle. I am Jeffrey. With us today we have Ryan Oakes and Jack Johnson, and we are here to cover various topics on cycling. To start, we're going to go ahead and cover the beer and the burritos. With us today we have Track 7 Panic. We got a India Pale Ale IPA, and I enjoy it. It's got a nice hoppy flavor to it.
Yeah.
I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10.
Oh, Track 7. I see what you did there. Semi-local too. It's we're in, if you don't know, Performance is in Chico, California, and this beer is brewed and canned in Sacramento, which is a stone's throw from us, about an hour and a half away. So thanks, Track 7, for, well, we still have to buy the beer. It's not sponsored.
Unsponsored,
yeah. Yeah, unsponsored, but for making good beers for us to enjoy for this episode 2.
Episode 2.
If you didn't get episode 1,
hop on back and we'll put it in the description. You can click on it, or you can just go to our profile and it'll be right there.
But episode 2 is going to be a good one, so stick around for this.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I was impressed with this one. Quite smooth for being 7%, so.
Yeah, not too bad.
I'll probably go 7.4 on this one.
7.4 out of 10.
Pretty good.
Okay, all right. Does that mean I got to give my rating?
Let's see.
I'm getting to the bottom of mine, so it's starting to get worse.
We'll keep a list of all these too.
Yeah.
Our winners.
That'll go in the description. We'll just have a running list of like the ratings of the beers. I think Track 7, the Panic, I have had it before. One of our teammates, Eric Cockrell, if you're listening, I know he used to work at Track 7 and introduced me to Panic. And I think it's a flagship kind of staple for them. And it's just like a solid, reliable IPA. Yeah. I think the 7 range is right for sure. Yeah, it's nothing you're going to write Homer about, but I think it's really consistent and good. Yeah.
And then if we happen to finish these, we did also get some Athletic Brewing, what is it? The Run Wild IPA. Some non-alcoholic beers, just so we don't get a little too wild on the podcast. And then we also have our burritos for today. We went to Los Arcos in Chico, California. I went with the Baja Burrito, and it's pretty close to what I was expecting. Got the carne asada, it's got guacamole, it's got sour cream, it's got the cilantro, got avocado. It's really just like a Baja Burrito, yeah.
Beans, that's nice.
It's really good. I'd give it a 8 out of 10.
We're not going to let Jack rate burritos because Jack is wrong. Jack is from Southern California, where burritos are supposed to be meat wrapped in a tortilla, and Jeff and I are kind of on the page of burritos should have more than just meat and tortilla to them. So,
gotta have the fillings.
Yeah, I want those.
Yeah,
the rice,
it makes
the
a burrito
beans.
a burrito.
Yeah. Jack, how's your burrito?
Still getting used. I got the California burrito. So
of course, he's from San Diego.
I did have to ask for no beans as well. I've never heard of a California burrito having beans in it. It's kind of odd to me. So, but it's sour cream, guacamole in there. Obviously, some French fries, carne asada. But I'm impressed with this one. Haven't had it before. Probably go 8.5 on this one. It's a good burrito. Not too greasy. A little bit of cheese in there too. It's tasty.
Not too shabby. I just got a regular old chicken burrito, and it's good. It's like a nice grilled chicken. Jeff would like it. Jeff loves his chicken burritos, unless they are kind of the...
From SoCal, and boiled chicken, and then you get food poisoning the day before BWR, and it doesn't go well.
Yeah, don't eat that stewed chicken that's been hanging out for a few days. Yeah, you don't want that.
Just got to be cautious with it.
That's a grilled chicken. A-okay. Not a bad option. Well, sweet. What do we got on the agenda for topics other than beer and burritos? We got bikes to talk about.
Got some bikes. And speaking of bikes, Specialized just launched the new SL8 this last couple weeks. And it's quite a redesign as far as visual looks. You know, it's 16.6 seconds faster. So you're going to be flying out there, cutting through the wind. But what is all this speed from? Everyone's already stated that it's the handlebar, right? It's not actually the bike that's much faster. But I did get the opportunity to go down to San Luis Obispo and test ride a couple. And I will tell you, it does ride, I guess better is a very vague term, but it is a more comfortable ride. And it is also a little bit stiffer. Which is like...
Yeah, kind of got an oxymoron.
Yeah, exactly. But it's strange, because whenever you go to stand up out of the saddle, the front end feels super planted. Like there's no flex whatsoever. And this is coming off of riding the SL7.
Right, so fair comparison.
Yeah. I put roughly 850 miles on one so far, and it's a great bike.
The SL7.
The SL7.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The SL8, though, is noticeably more compliant in that rear end, which is strange. Like, whenever you hit...
end there?
Yeah, whenever you hit bumps seated, I think it's that smaller seat post, as well as, like, the Athos bottom bracket and chainstays.
Yeah.
It just has a little bit more flex in there that doesn't affect you whenever you actually stand up to put down the power.
Interesting.
I'm no engineer, but they did an extremely good job designing it, I would say.
So we're thinking that you're getting more front end stiffness, so it feels more precise. You feel like when you stand up to put power into it, sprint, climb, whatever, the bike is flexing less on that front end, right? That's what we're getting at with front end stiffness.
Mm-hmm.
And we're thinking probably that's maybe that new speed sniffer or head tube, right?
I would assume it has something to do with it. Just the shape of it, a little bit more carbon up there.
Right.
Yeah, more material.
It's got to have more than just aerodynamic advantage for it to be up there. So I'm assuming stiffness is semi-correlated with that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and it's an impressive step because really you're looking for a faster bike that's more stiffer and it's more comfortable.
Which I feel like that's every Tarmac they've ever released has that same exact marketing behind it, right? It's like lighter, stiffer, faster.
The one bike to rule them
more
all.
Comfortable. Yeah, one bike to rule them all. And that is the marketing on this one too, you know?
Yeah.
But is it BS?
I wouldn't, I mean, as far as like the 16.6 seconds faster, like that could be BS.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's all in that cockpit. Throw that on the SL7, it could be the exact same thing.
Right.
But it's a better riding bike, I would say. So it's not all complete BS. I am excited to get on one and spend more time on it.
Well, so that cockpit, so everybody knows what we're talking about, the S-Works level of the Tarmac SL8 comes with this integrated bar stem, handlebar stem piece they're calling a cockpit. And the tiers below either come with what they've been using previously, which is that Roval Rapide handlebar, or some of the lower level stuff, just a basic alloy handlebar.
Yes. And that's like the one that I demoed was the expert level, which came with a round handlebar.
Okay.
Roval C38 wheels, so not the super super deep, stiff wheels.
Right.
But a more compliant, little bit heavier version. And the bike still felt different.
So on your SL7, you have the Roval Rapide handlebars, and you have the Roval Rapide CL wheels. So you've got the nicer wheels, the nicer bars, and you'd say the ride experience, even with not as nice a handlebars and not as nice wheels on an SL8, was superior.
Slightly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's so hard because it was like a couple days between riding. Yeah. I think to really feel the big difference, it would have to be like back-to-back testing.
Sure.
But it was, I was just pretty blown away by the feel of the bike as far as how it ate up the bumps.
That's something to be said, because I'm with you. I'm just getting into close to the first 1,000 miles of my SL7 as well. And granted, I'm coming off of kind of some obscure recent road bikes, but just in my time riding SL7, I've been like, man, this thing is stiff and snappy, but it is a little harsh on that rear end. And I don't think, necessarily too harsh or inappropriately so, but it's definitely like descending and bumpy terrain, you're thinking about it a little bit more. So if this uses a rear end that's a little more compliant without giving up on the stiffness, but you can add stiffness to the front end, like that sounds like a win-win-win.
And then let's not forget about the weight too. This bike is quite a bit lighter.
That is huge.
So it's going to climb better. It's going to accelerate a little bit better. And I mean, you can get the S-Works with their Ace in a 56 at like 14.5 pounds.
Whew.
That's pretty insane. Like that's below the UCI limit.
I think the thing that blew me away talking weight is something that's worth like telling everybody is an SL7 in the S-Works version of the frame is heavier than a non-S-Works version of an SL8. So you can buy their 10R, is it 10R carbon version of the frame, and it will weigh less than the, I think S-Works is 12R carbon, the 12R carbon of the S-Works version of the SL7. That in itself is like pretty compelling. I mean, if you care about weight, if weight's a big deal for you, or everybody likes a light bike. Who doesn't like a light bike?
I mean, if people are always calculating that like dollar per gram value, well, if you're going for that kind of a value, go with the 10R carbon SL8.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The S-Works version, and like we said, as far as speed goes, it really, from the stuff we've been reading about, sounds like a lot of that 16.6 seconds over 40K is coming out of the cockpit.
Mm-hmm.
So you could spend some money on,
Yeah.
if you've gotten a fitting and you know what length stem you need, you know what handlebar width you run, potentially grabbing that bar stem of the cockpit, building up a SL8 of the non-S-Works version, and you've got something stupid light, like it's all the aero benefit and all that 16.6 seconds worth of speed with a really comfortable frame. I mean, you didn't ride the S-Works one and you said it felt amazing. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a bike to look at for sure. We've got a few on site.
Yeah.
They're a little hard to get right now, but we've got a few. Happy hunting. Hopefully get some more deliveries in October and January on some bikes. And yeah, Jeff's actually got one on the way. He was so excited. He's got one of his own coming now. So hopefully here shortly we'll be able to give you a review of a little bit more than just a day ride
with
on it.
Some more time on it, with the cockpit and everything, get it all built up, and I'll let you guys know how it goes.
Nice.
But talking about that SL8, it was featured at World Championships.
That it was.
Now, it didn't necessarily soar to the podium or anything of such,
No, it did not.
as Evan Pohl did not have a great day, but it was there, as were many other brands of bikes. And Worlds was a very exciting day.
Mm-hmm.
It was. It felt like Worlds was in Jack's family's homeland, right? We were
Close,
up in
yes.
close, little north, right?
Yeah.
The road race was it was in Scotland, so Worlds centered around Glasgow, city in Scotland, but the road race was a point-to-point followed by a circuit in Glasgow, so it went from Edinburgh to Glasgow, and then 14 laps, something like that?
It was 10 laps of a
10 laps?
14.3
There you go.
kilometer
Backward.
course.
Dyslexia. Yep.
Yeah. Which, how did you feel about having that circuit at the end of the race? I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I mean, it just changes the whole race dynamic as far as who could win that kind of a race.
100%.
Yeah. Because it gets you a little bit of both there, too. The long open roads, and then you see in your notes here, 50-plus corners in each lap of the circuit. It's pretty insane.
Yeah.
Worlds is pretty notorious for finishing on a circuit. That's a pretty common thing in the road race. But some of the circuits have been blah, where, they're just doing laps in a downtown area. It's all designed for spectators, right? It's designed for the viewer. But I think Glasgow being kind of an old city, a lot of cobbled streets, a lot of narrow stuff. I don't know who was the course designer this year, but they put something wild together. Like, to your point, 50 turns per lap.
Yeah.
I mean...
And the rain, too.
Oh,
like
the
that,
rain.
that completely changed
That's expected, too. In
Yeah.
that part of the country there is, too. So.
Absolutely.
And I thought it was hilarious at the end of the race. I saw an interview where Pogacar told the person who designed the course, he said, 2 laps too many. Like, 2 laps too many. It's like, okay, that's a lot coming from him.
Yeah. And Worlds is typically one of the longest races of the year, longest one-day races.
I'm always shocked at how long those races
are. How many K was it this year?
271K this year.
168 miles.
Yeah.
Which, I mean...
That's a big day.
Jumping ahead a tiny bit, finishing time was just over 6 hours, right?
Yeah.
Unreal.
I mean, if anyone ever questioned how fast like World Tour pros are, when was the last time you rode your bike that far? Then when was the last time you were able to do it in anything close to 6 hours? I mean, I think like a lot of people go ride a Hillary Century ride and plan on it being a 6-hour day, you know? You just toss an extra...
Ride that far in less than 10 hours.
Yeah. We'll be stoked on you. That's big, impressive day. So that in itself was always fun to watch. It's just how big these courses are, how good these guys are.
But they did get a small break, or decent sized break in the middle.
Unintended.
Mm-hmm.
Non-intended break.
Yeah, a little protest going on. Ended up being a 58-minute break.
Almost an hour.
Which is pretty wild.
Yeah, how long then? Do you know how long it was neutralized after that then? Because you would need some sort of like warm-up period again to...
They didn't.
Really?
They immediately let the break get their 8 minutes that they had on the field.
Right.
And then the field went.
Yep.
And the interesting thing there was whenever they restarted, the break got reeled back extremely quick, too. Yep. It's like everyone had time to recover. Right. The momentum was all stopped. It's like...
Yeah, if you've ever been in like a breakaway on the bike, stopping is the worst possible thing for the break. You start to get into a groove, everybody settles in, the rotation starts to become fluid, you start to sing songs in your head, distract yourself from the pain, whatever you're doing in a breakaway, it all starts to just kind of work and you just roll that. Mm-hmm. To then stop for an hour, and then have
you
to
all come
reset
together
that.
again,
You
too.
all come together. You get to see everybody with you, and they stand no chance. They stand no chance when
that was
there's a
early
restart.
too. That was
It is pretty early, and it was pretty early.
Yeah, I think there was still like 190K to go.
Yeah.
Still so much.
But it was interesting to watch the riders how they handled the protest in that break, because people are off frustrated with the race organizers and like there's nothing we can do. There's literally people stuck in the middle of the road. We cannot proceed. We got to get them cleared. They got law enforcement out there doing their thing, but
some of them even took advantage of having this break.
That's true.
And one of them being the winner of the race, like Vanderpool. A couple of the Netherlands riders actually went to a house that was nearby and used their bathroom. And he credited them at the end of the race for his win.
Wow.
That was a big thing in his interview, was like, I'd like to thank the couple that led me into their house to use their toilet. Wow, that's a big thing.
Vanderpool wants Worlds with protests from now on. That is crazy.
They're gonna frame that toilet seat on the wall now. And
Yeah. Have him sign it.
There's some rainbow bands on across it or something.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, I don't know if they were stuck using the loo over at that house, but once the race got restarted, much of the Dutch team, including Vanderpool, were actually caught out in a split when the race restarted, because the break went. They restarted the rest of the field. Where there were two breaks. I mean, there was a break and a chase, I think.
Yeah.
So once everybody got restarted and the field took off, there was actually a split in the main field. And it seemed like, I think in those situations, we want to think like the race organizers have it all together, know what's going on, and can communicate well. But there's probably just somebody at the front with a megaphone saying, all right, we're going to go now. And not the whole Dutch team, a portion of the Dutch team missed out, including Vanderpool. And they had to do a lot of work to get him back into the race, actually. But he got to use the restroom, and apparently it was worth it.
And he did play the rest of the race pretty smart, too.
He did.
Whenever he was up in the moves, he let Evenepoel and Van Aert attack Pogacar, trying to tire him out when they were on the circuit. He just sat in and rested.
Yep.
He threw attacks when he needed to throw attacks, and in the end,
monster attacks when he went.
Yeah,
he was not wasting any bullets there.
Not at all.
They were full commitment for sure. Yeah.
Which is different from how we've seen him race in the past too.
Maybe a maturing Vanderpool, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of coming into his own a bit.
I just think back to the Amstel Gold Race whenever he won that the first time and just towed everyone up to the group and then still just out sprinted.
Yeah.
But it's he did all the work and still came out on top.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different now.
Definitely a little different.
And he, even with a crash, 15K to go, which was, I guess, part of the drama from having 50 plus wet corners on a circuit. It's bound to happen to somebody. But then how quickly he got up was pretty impressive. And then he lost a cleat.
Yeah, he
from
broke
the
the cleat.
Broke the cleat.
Oh, the cleat and a bow on his
bow
shoe.
dial.
Yeah.
Just that shot where the camera zoomed in on his foot and he's sitting there and the foot just shaking from all the adrenaline and everything. He's trying to rip that flopping boa dial off the shoe. I think it's going to go down in history because he was clear solo at that point.
Right.
With
you
not a long way to go.
He had a 30-second gap at that point.
Yeah.
He lost 12 seconds from it.
Wow.
Which is wild. To come to complete stop, hit the deck,
gather yourself,
again, and lose 12 seconds.
If nothing, I guess that shows you how much they were having to slow down for corners, though.
It's true.
The fact that he didn't lose that much is due to how slow they had to take those corners.
Yeah. If it had been a straight piece of road or dry conditions,
probably
would have brought him back much more quickly.
But also, that comes into at Worlds, they don't get race radios. So the chasing group didn't even know that he crashed.
Yep. Yeah, the dynamic of Worlds, one of the things I really enjoy about it is it feels more like amateur racing that we're used to. These teams have matching jerseys, but they're not on matching bikes. They don't have matching helmets because they're riding their trade team's equipment, but they're just wearing matching jerseys. They don't race together all season.
They don't know each other
they don't know
well.
Yeah, speak the same language, which I'm sure is great. But then the follow vehicles, there's all these countries represented, and they can't afford to have that many cars on the road. So a lot of the smaller countries, smaller teams will let's go together on a follow vehicle. If there's no race radio back to the car, if you get a flat, Worlds is a really rough place to get a flat.
Well, and so many people, their race was ruined when they flatted.
Yeah.
Laporte had a mechanical and could not get back in just because of how fast they were going on the circuit.
Yep.
And even if it was a quick fix, you're pretty out of luck at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember one of the commentators talking about when they first hit the circuit, how fast. I think it was the Danish team had hit the front at the beginning of the circuit, and they were going so quick. And he specifically said, "This pace reminds me of the pace a group would be doing in a downtown criterium racing for an hour and a half, but they've got 3.5 hours to go." So how they treated that circuit was like us going to a crit, except at the end of a huge day and for 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
Nuts. Absolutely nuts.
And that circuit featuring all those like short, punchy climbs definitely played into all those like cyclocross racers that are used to just like all out, short, hard efforts, small recovery.
On again, off again. Yeah.
Which is also why a reason that I think Evenepoel struggled a little bit. It was like when he was in that front group, it was like he was off the front or he was off the back of it.
Yeah.
It was like not able to just sit in the group.
So you'd say you like those longer, smooth efforts then?
Oh, 100%.
Like a long time trial?
Yeah, exactly.
Like a long time trial. I think it was interesting. I think I hadn't seen the race until a little bit later after it aired. And I know you pointed out to me, Jeff, you're like, the meat of the race is that last 2 hours. And I remember watching the last 2 hours, and sure enough, there's like the attacks are going. You see the Danes are on the front for Pedersen. Pedersen's on the front for himself. It seemed quite obvious to me that Pedersen had no interest in going to the line with the likes of Van der Poel and Van Aert. He wanted to make sure, he wanted to see if he could get a separation and be away from them and pedal his own day. Which, given his skill set, was an interesting approach,
Yeah, I always consider him more of just like a sprinter.
Yeah.
But I guess, if you look at his wins, quite a few of them come from a reduced field sprint.
Absolutely.
Like he has some of those field sprints, but a lot of times he'll do the work to be in a move to sprint from that.
And knowing maybe the depth of the Belgian team this year, I wonder, especially given the lack of race radios, if there was just kind of this idea in his head of, I don't need to go to the line with a Wout and have him have like Tige Benoot there and Evenepoel there and go down the list of all the Belgian riders that were there. Like he's going to be outgunned in that situation. So yeah, a reduced group. It just felt really like forceful. Like he was really trying to force it. It just wasn't quite going.
Yeah. At the end, he didn't get on the podium, I think, because he spent everything he had to be there.
Pogacar out-sprinted him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which doesn't make sense for Pedersen, right?
Yeah.
He just used too many matches.
Yes, he used everything he had.
It was great to see him there, because I know we were talking before the race and thought, like, Pedersen, I don't know, this might be too punchy of a court. And sure enough, he makes it in that. I mean, at the end of the day, it was a final group of 4. And he made it in that final group of 4, which was a star-studded cast. Love seeing Pogacar in it.
Oh yeah, I mean it's that podium, those 3 podium guys, like Van der Poel, Van Aert, Pogacar, like
it's your Flanders break. It's it's the same crew. Yeah, super fun to see.
Yeah, real exciting racing going on.
Absolutely. Well, I'll say Jack tried to give us a nice transition. I wasn't done talking about the road race yet because I hate time trials, but we had who took the win?
Evenepoel, of course.
Evenepoel.
So, kind of shocking, I expected Ghana to win.
Yeah. Ghana seemed kind of like...
This was a long time trial, though.
I think it was the end, whenever there were a few like little climbs and stuff, is where Evenepoel got that little edge over Ghana. Because the first split, emphasis on little there. But like the first split, Ghana had I think like 12 seconds on him or something.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, Ghana's no slouch going uphill, but he's just not going to do well in the steep stuff at the end of the day. I mean, we saw Ghana at San Remo this year make it over the Poggio, right? Like with the leaders, like he can climb when it's a flatter climb and it's steady. Evenepoel is just a smaller guy. Ghana's really big. I don't actually know their stats, to be honest, but I know they're on opposites of the spectrum. Yeah, for sure.
But then talk about like finishing on a cobbled climb that hit like 14%. Like,
I don't think anyone would have predicted that it finishes on a cobbled climb.
No.
That was fun to watch.
I think that's one of the things I love the most about UCI time trials is going back to amateur racing, the stuff that we do in America, we have a time trial, we find the flattest, straightest piece of road we can to let people do out and backs on. That's American time trialing. And you watch this kind of time trial, and most of the good American time trials that I know wouldn't make it through these courses. they're too technical. They have too much climbing. People be debating, should I be using a road bike and a road helmet? And it's like World Tour time trialing is a completely different thing than what we do in the States. And to that point, you're like, how are they riding these cobbled bikes or these time trial bikes on these cobbled climbs? It's like, it's still faster. It still made sense to do. You know, it's just a wild thing because we'd never go to a TT that had that in it here.
I don't go to TTs.
Well, they're flat. I mean, I would be way more interested in TTing if TTs were like what we see.
It
on
would
TV.
make it more interesting.
Way more interesting.
Yeah,
it's a little
more engaging.
I feel like generally speaking, like amateur time trialists that we know tend to be big diesels with less handling skills.
Just raw power.
And just like tuck, arrow. They've got money for a fancy kit. And they're just monsters. But they usually are the guys at the back of the crit getting dropped, right? Mm-hmm. The time trials on the World Tour are some of the best bike handlers in the world because they got to rail those turns on really funky bikes going 30 plus miles an hour.
Most of the time in the extensions.
Most of the time in the extensions, yeah.
It's pretty incredible. And, I mean, talking about a good ride, Brandon McNulty, he took fourth. Like he beat Wout Van Aert, which is pretty crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think one of the first times I remember getting to ride with Nick Nolte, he came up for the Chico stage race one year, and he was just off the podium. And I think Evan Huffman had made it into the breakaway in the crit, and McNulty, for the last half of the P1-2 race, sat the front of that race and towed the entire field around. He didn't take a turn with anybody else. He didn't trade pulls. He didn't rotate. He literally towed the field around for 45 minutes, keeping the gap to Huffman in check. And it's like the dude, that was when he was like 17.
Still on junior gears.
Still on juniors. He won that time trial with like a 30.5 mile an hour average or 31 mile an hour average on USA Cycling at the time's requirement of junior gears.
So he had to have had a cadence of like 110, 115.
120, something stupid. Yeah. But seeing him now at this level, like, what an awesome result. Mm-hmm. That's something for America to be proud of right there.
Yeah. That's big time.
That is definitely big time.
Yeah, and talking about being proud of Americans.
Oh, yeah.
Chloe Dygert's comeback. How about that?
Love it.
Yeah.
Big fan.
Yeah, after her big crash in 2020 where she pretty much like severed her quad like right above her kneecap. Oh, she had so much rehab, so many surgeries.
I have nightmares about surgeries. That crash.
Yeah,
I didn't know you like she ran into a guardrail, flipped over it, and used the back side of the guardrail to slice herself open. Like I didn't even know that was possible until she did it. Mm-hmm. Like holy smokes!
But she came back and won Worlds again
in 3 years.
Yeah, and it wasn't like she ran away with it either. She was putting in work. I mean, she only had a 6 second gap.
Did you know she was sick for it?
Sick?
She was sick. Yeah, that's why she didn't end up doing the road race too.
Oh, wow.
She was starting to come down with it. She had said in an interview if she was going to race the day before, she wouldn't have raced.
Wow.
Because she was still sick.
Wow.
So that's why I saw an analysis of her power, and she had a really bad positive split because her power dropped 50 watts on the second half of the race.
Whoa.
Because of how sick she was.
I don't know about you guys, but racing sick is really tough.
Oh, yeah. Especially for an event like Worlds where you're giving everything you possibly can.
Shoot, we podcasted last week with Nick. Nick sat right where I'm sitting, right? Mm-hmm. And he didn't even come in for the podcast day because he was sick. And here's Chloe winning Worlds. We gotta give Nick some trash on that.
All I gotta do is sit on the couch and pick up beer.
No, we didn't want to worry about Nick being sick. None of us want to get sick. Maybe that's a decent segue too into skipping ahead a little bit, but we could talk about Tahiti a bit.
Yeah, so as we had mentioned previously, we are headed to Tahiti mid-September.
Yep.
We're going to head out on the 16th, and we have a 6-day, 8-stage race coming up, which is a pretty big deal. It's a UCI international race, so there's going to be competitors from France, from New Caledonia, from all over the place. And it's a really good opportunity to test our skills against other competition besides U.S. athletes.
Needless to say, Jeff's training his tail off. I'm training my tail off, and thanks for not coming in, Nick. We didn't want to get sick. I'm trying to keep healthy, so I've given him some crap there, mostly joking, but we appreciate that. Yeah, we're pumped to go. Jackson come with us. Jackson going to play a bit of soigneur and director sportif for us, driving the car behind the field. Yeah, so
you're heading down there with EJ and Mitchell from...
It's EJ's training camp. check them out on YouTube. We'll link to them.
Yep.
And two really cool guys that we're excited to get to know a little better, and we'll have a lot of fun down there.
Yeah, they came up last week, and we did a big old ride on Tuesday, did some endurance miles, got in a couple lead-out practices.
Yeah.
Because that always takes practice. I mean, it's so hard to get the timing right, the order, everything. So it was good to hang out with those guys, get some riding in, and we're going to get, I think, quite a bit more before we actually head out. So looking forward to it all.
Hopefully we'll have some content, and check out EJ's channel. That's going to be the place to watch it. He's blogging his whole training leading up to Tahiti. We're featured in a few of them, but we'll be heading to Santa Rosa in 1 week from the time of filming this and recording this podcast.
On August 22nd, we'll be down there.
Yeah, that's a better way to say it. We're going to be going to Santa Rosa to do the Tuesday night crits, the TNT.
Yep, the Tuesday night twilight.
Tuesday night twilight on August 22nd. Hang out with EJ and Mitch, and check out EJ's channel on YouTube to find out a little more about that, and follow along when we start Tahiti here in about 1 month.
And while we're on the topic of performance events, we are going to be heading down to the Mammoth Gran Fondo September 9th as well. We're going to have a booth there at the registration on Friday.
Yes, September 8th, Friday, 12 to 5 o'clock. And then at 5:30, we're in a group ride from there, actually, right at Footloose Sports, right at Mammoth Lakes. Giving away a $100 gift card as well, so anyone who enters to win that. But we're excited for that. Have a pretty good booth set up. Our first event of the year where we're actually setting up a booth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be a good time.
Yeah. Please come by and say hi. Let us know if you watch the podcast or listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear from you. We'll be selling performance branded water bottles for $1, and we will be
$1
evangelizing our love for road tubeless.
Yes.
So if you don't believe tubeless is any good,
Just stay
please
home.
or come and let us change your mind. We're going to actually have a station where we just got people stabbing tubeless tires. You can, if you've ever wanted to take out your anger on a bike tire and didn't want to, waste a $60 or $80 tubeless tire, we'll let you do it to ours. Come on by.
Yep. So we'll see you then. Mammoth Gran Fondo, September 9th. And then we're going to head back up to a little bit of race breakdowns. And we're going to stick in the U.S. with this one because the Leadville 100 mountain bike race just happened this past weekend.
How could we not talk about Leadville?
There was some pretty astonishing performance, I'd say.
Yeah, astonishing to say the least. If you don't know, Leadville is... I don't know how many years Leadville's been running, but in the past couple years... Yeah, quite a few. It's
like 50 or something.
It's come under the umbrella of the Lifetime Grand Prix, which is a U.S.-based off-road endurance racing series. So you have gravel races, cross-country races, marathon may not be fair, kind of marathon or ultra cross-country racing. Anything dirt. So each event's totally different than the last. They're all established events. It includes the likes of, Unbound. You got Leadville in there.
Sea
Otter's Fuego XL was one of the races. There's 8 in the series, 7 in the series?
There's 7 in the series. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So Leadville is one, I think, maybe, if it were me, more intimidating ones because it's really high in the air.
The elevation has to be absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
A minimum of 10,000 feet.
Yeah.
The town of Leadville is at and over 10,000 feet. That's where you
and
start.
it peaks at like 12.5. And
so if you were
racing.
from Colombia or something, you'd be like, yeah, no big deal. For the rest of us who live in, we're in Chico. We're
7,000
200 feet right now.
We're at 274 feet.
274 feet, yeah. I guess, I know that's pretty low, but 12,000 is a different game. And starting at 10 is like, whew.
Yeah. You're not even going to sleep well up there at 10,000 feet burning up there.
No, and even if you are acclimated, you're still not going to be able to perform at the level that you're used to.
You never can at altitude. It's you're physiologically capped in what you're capable of doing, which makes what happened even more spectacular in my book. If you didn't know, Keegan Swenson has been absolutely crushing the Lifetime Grand Prix. He's won multiple.
He has already won. Prior to Leadville, he had won 3 of the 3 races.
Yep. So he's got a really good track record right now.
Oh yeah.
And he went ahead and went out to Leadville and won. He won last year, so he kept his win from last year.
I think he missed the course record last year by about 90 seconds, I think it was.
Yeah, just over a minute.
So on pace most of the day, probably.
Yeah,
coming in just shy of it.
And this year, what did he do?
He absolutely destroyed it.
Yeah.
Like, not even close.
Yeah,
By,
superhuman
what
effort.
was it, like 14 minutes or something
14
like
or
that?
15 minutes on the record, and then
Yeah.
second place was 25 minutes behind him on the day.
Which is absurd because this is dang near a world-class field.
Yeah.
Like, this Lifetime Series is drawing out serious competition, and to beat them in a 6-hour race by 25 minutes
Yeah.
is insane.
Well, you say it's a world-class field. I mean, we have the likes of retired World Tour riders competing. We have the likes of, I guess, technically current World Tour riders competing. So you have people like Alex Howes and Lachlan Morton, and I mean, so on the road scene, guys that have competed in the Tour de France and the Giro and Spring Classics, they're in it. But you get this awesome other side of the spectrum where you have these incredibly good pro cyclocross racers, pro cross-country mountain bike racers, which the mountain biking side is the way Keegan leans, right? Like he's
that's where
big
he originated
mountain biking
in.
history. Yeah. So it's really fun to see, like, have you ever wondered what a guy who races the Tour de France can do against that guy who's really fast on a mountain bike? And this is the
I mean, you also see that in the
arena for
World
it.
Tour, though, right? Of like, you have your one-day racers and
Yes.
you have your Grand Tour racers.
That's true.
It is a different kind of a rider, whereas a race like this would lean more towards those one-day riders.
Absolutely. And these are really hard one days as well. Not to discredit anything we've talked about previously. Worlds looked insane.
Yeah.
They did that however many K in 6 hours. This was also 6 hours, but this was 6 hours, generally speaking, on a mountain bike, mostly in the dirt, at altitude for the duration is like,
Yeah.
I mean, that
Not much drafting going on there.
no.
Early on a little bit.
Well, early on, we did have, I mean,
See, that's where it gets interesting because going into this race, Keegan wasn't even trying to win. He was just trying to break the record. Like, he just happened to win.
to break the record required winning.
I mean, exactly. But, like, he was going with the mindset of, like, I am taking the record.
I don't care who's in my way.
Yep.
Yeah.
And with that, he had an interesting strategy.
He did. That approach was neato. Somebody we've raced with in our district, another. Are we gonna call Santa Cruz Northern California?
Yeah,
Central
that's okay.
California. We'll call it Northern California. Santa Cruz. Call it Central if you want. Tobin Ortenblad. We've raced with him a good chunk. He kind of cut his chops in cyclocross as a junior and got into road and has now seemed to progress more into that gravel and off-road endurance racing. He's in the Lifetime Series as well. He and Keegan are teammates.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both on that Santa Cruz.
The hit squad.
The hit squad, yeah.
And they give him the 1-2 punch, that's for sure.
They were the hit squad for sure. Keegan described it and other people described it. It was like a 25-mile...
It's 25 mile time trial, essentially.
trial.
Yeah, he
went
just
to the front, hammered as hard as he could.
Tobin effectively completely sacrificed his race and his day to get Keegan as far forward and help him cover as much ground as possible for Leadville to get close to taking that course record. And dear goodness, that seems to be something that was impactful.
Yeah, guaranteed. I think it was because the year prior, I remember hearing something that there were times when it just lulled. And everyone wants to conserve if you're trying to fight for the win, right?
Right.
So no one wants to
makes it really hard
sacrifice
to rank
themselves.
course records.
So if he's going for the win and he has someone that's willing to lay on the sword and put themselves out there,
Yep.
I mean, that's going to help out a ton in the long run.
And if the rest of the field didn't know their game plan, you at least got clues on the start line.
They were warming up on rollers.
When was the last time you went to a 100-mile mountain bike race and watched people warm up on rollers?
At the line. On the line.
On the line.
Like,
On the start line. Wearing
minutes-
like down jackets. It's
minutes
dark
before the
out.
race goes out.
Yeah. Like they were taking it so incredibly serious. And it's what it takes. And I mean, proof's in the pudding, right?
Yeah.
Like 5:43. It's mind-boggling.
And I think it's also interesting how Tobin continued his race. Like he
Yeah.
blew himself up for 25 miles and then had 75 miles to go.
Absolutely.
At elevation.
He finished in
Superhero.
Yeah,
what is
he's-
it, 6 hours and 48 minutes.
Yeah, he still had a good ride.
Super competitive time. Like,
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
impressive.
extremely impressive.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I think the other interesting thing aside from the event itself was we saw some unique stuff. Some one of the best parts, I guess, about the Lifetime Grand Prix is all the events are different. Mm-hmm. And that means gear selection is so unique to the rider. The riders often favor what they think the course needs. They favor what they think their skill set is. So we see interesting mixes of like, is this gravel? Is this cross-country mountain bike race? Do I run hardtail? Do I run full suspension? What tires? A lot of options. And there were some really interesting choices for Leadville.
Yes, that there were. I mean, not only like Keegan going with the big 42 chainring on the front, or Lachlan and his contraption of a bike, all the way to hardtail mountain bikes with drop bars on them.
Yep.
I mean, there was just a very interesting choice of equipment out there.
Well, since we've been talking Keegan, maybe we should kind of go through his setup a little bit. That was pretty unique. His was maybe one of the more, I would say, subtle
I was gonna say
choices, right?
If you look at it from a distance, it doesn't look that out of the ordinary, but you get up close and you can really see some unique pieces on there. So
Santa Cruz rider, he of course then was on the Highball CC frame, which is their hardtail cross-country race frame. Running SRAM transmission. He's a SRAM athlete. That makes sense. The Highball is UDH compatible, so no problemo there. But a trend that we've been seeing in gravel, we saw it at Unbound, we've seen it in quite a few races now, is really oversized chain rings. I think for guys competing at this level, the super wide range rear end, that 520% Eagle range that SRAM is offering, these guys don't need that low of gears, and so they're actually tossing on oversized chain rings to, it seems like mostly to reduce mechanical drag. Mm-hmm. It's one of the main arguments for it. So he ran a 40-tooth chainring on the front, which, if you're not a mountain biker, is massive for trail bikes.
That bike is only spec'd to clear a 38.
So you're pushing the limits as it is. Yeah. It's kind of an interesting choice.
Which means his mechanic had to have worked, as he said, a little bit of magic in order to get it to fit.
Probably don't try this at home kind of magic. Some crazy spacers maybe.
But I do want to know how he did it.
Exactly. Get a file out, shave away some carbon. Yeah, it's probably a warranty voiding setup, I would imagine.
Potentially.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talks around this office of how you get bigger chain rings on cross-country mountain bikes. No one's figured it out here yet.
That's the one thing that stops me from riding a hardtail mountain bike at gravel races is the chainring capacity.
Yep, you want that bigger ring. Yeah, absolutely. He also ran the RockShox Sid SL Ultimate, and that's the newer fork, right?
It's only a couple weeks old now, as far as being released.
Press. Yeah, very light. Not the lightest fork on the market, but right up there.
The new one is now the lightest fork on the market.
Is it?
As far as like an actual suspension fork, not a Lauf thing.
Right, that doesn't count.
But the new one.
A dampened, fully adjustable hydraulic.
He was running the 120 SL, so not the 120 version, which is a little bit heavier, but the 100 mil version is extremely light.
Sure. So super light front end. And I think this is probably the most interesting choice. Kind of a unique, again, pressure on the mechanic to get things done. Santa Cruz is owned by the same company that owns Reserve Wheels. So you'll see Reserve Wheels now on Cervelos, on Santa Cruz's. So, of course, he's riding Reserve carbon wheels. He chose to ride the gravel rim that Reserve makes as opposed to one of their mountain rims.
Mm-hmm. The GR25, is it? It is, yes. Mm-hmm. He said in one of his Instagram posts that it is more compliant, and because he's not running super wide tires, he didn't necessarily need the wide rims. And on that kind of a course, that wheel just was going to be faster.
Yeah, and you got to think, I mean, we've heard the marketing spiel now from so many brands for years at this point that smoother is faster, more comfortable is faster. And if you think of the context of a 100-mile off-road race, that is fatiguing to have something that beats you up a little bit more. If you can save a little bit of energy by having something a bit more comfortable, that could be totally worth it.
Could it be a little bit lighter too then?
I would assume so, because it's looks like a narrower rim as well, which you have to assume is a lighter rim. Mm-hmm. We'd have to go look up the specs, I suppose. And that doesn't just work, right? You can't just take the gravel rims and throw them on a highball CC with a RockShox SID. They had to get relaced to mountain bike spaced boost hubs. So again, very like, it's the fun thing with watching this stuff is you have to put some work in it. It's not just like stock off the shelf. Ran himself those Maxxis Aspen STs in a 2.25, which by modern standards is pretty narrow.
Yeah, they look more like gravel tires. And like the tread pattern too is a very smooth center tread with some knobbies on the end.
Extremely fast rolling.
Super fast rolling, yeah. And then Santa Cruz's flat bar for a handlebar up front, he ran a 660 mil. Again, context for some people, if you're not familiar with mountain stuff, trail bikes, it's like 780, 800 is like a really common width. So 660 is definitely on the narrow side. It's a little, I'd almost say old school.
Yeah, I mean, even back in 2015 when I was riding XC, I was running like 720s.
Right.
Which I felt were pretty like narrow, especially by today's standards.
Right.
So,
and you got to consider,
extremely short.
Argument there is, Leadville, it's not all just technical single track, right? You've got sections of the course like power line and other things where you're just pedaling. Aerodynamics is a huge factor, especially at the pace that Keegan will be pedaling at, right? So,
and if you actually saw the bike setup, him, but not only him, also had bar tape wrapped around the inside close to the stem. I'm assuming so they could get down in that aero position for the wide open sections.
That makes sense. Interesting thing, he ran the Garmin Edge 130. Weight savings?
That's my guess. It's
also, I mean, what good is data going to do then? I mean, he just needs the timer, right? Like, he had his pacing plan.
Yeah.
All he needed was his timer and maybe power.
The course is incredibly well marked. He's not needing it for navigation.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. It very well could be. I just want less in the way.
Do you think he is even looking at power at that point? Or is he just looking at, I have to be here by this time, and I'm going to sacrifice everything
what it takes
this
to
time
hit
to hit the course record?
Could be. I imagine a guy like him is probably pretty in tune with his pacing and his body to just...
He'd probably tell you what he's doing right now. Like,
exactly.
He doesn't need a computer to tell him.
Like, he's got a power meter so they can look at the data after. He might not need it during, like, us mortals.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Also, potentially a weight savings thing. I don't know. I mean, that's marginal, but there's a lot of climbing at Leadville.
I mean, there's some massive Garmin computers now, so the weight savings could be somewhat significant.
You got a Garmin the size of your iPhone sitting on the front of your bike.
The 130 is small compared to most of them. So,
and we're used to talking road stuff. We've got a UCI weight limit at road events. There's no weight limits on the bikes at these events. So the lighter you go, there's no one's going to cut you off for making your bike too light. Another interesting thing, we saw a few riders doing this. Keegan was one of the people that also ran road pedals instead of mountain.
Yeah, and he has done it at quite a few other gravel events as well.
Yeah.
It's that thing of the road pedals provide a little bit more of a platform.
Yep.
Your feet aren't going to wrap around the pedal because it is just a bigger pedal.
Yep.
Slightly lighter and just a very secure fit. Like, you're not planning on walking at an event like this,
right?
Especially if you're at the front end of the race.
Yep.
So if you don't have to get off, what does it matter what's on your feet?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is rotational mass. You can't refute that. If you want to say he saved weight with a Garmin, that's kind of silly. Saving weight on your foot, it matters that you're lifting that every single pedal stroke. I mean, if he's doing 100 RPMs, he's lifting that thing 100 times per minute. That's a lot. Yeah. So that stuff all adds up. Yeah. And if you know the course isn't going to require you to get off, that's really the big advantage of mountain shoes is you got to get off sometimes.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we also had an interesting setup from Lachlan Morton. Jeff alluded to that. Jeff, what was Lachlan's setup?
The most standout thing on it is hands down the stem.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't that weird than that.
Yeah, he took this like stem that's typically like a riser stem where you can raise your bars like 65 degrees or something like that and just flip that thing down. I mean, his handlebars were at the top of his fork crown.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like that Jack pointed out, though. You looked at the bike by itself and it looked absolutely weird and bizarre. Like, what is he thinking? Then you see a picture of him on the bike and it looks totally normal.
Yeah.
Like, whatever body proportions he has.
He's a lanky dude.
He's just a lanky guy. It's just what he needed to get his fit. So, I guess that goes to say, don't just do what looks cool. Sometimes you got to do what works. And for Lachlan, I mean, he got a decent result there.
Yeah.
And that bike, it may look ridiculous, but he looked really normal and comfortable on it. So,
yeah, I think my favorite thing I saw from Lachlan post race was this Instagram story of a screenshot from one of the downhill segments of the course. 4th overall on it. He's enough talk about the stem. It descends fine. Bravo.
Good on him. Good on
Top
him.
4 finish on the downhills. All you need. Like
pretty incredible coming from a dude with a big road background too. Yeah. Like they aren't necessarily known for their descending skills, at least off road.
And Lachlan, even these days, he's kind of just known for going and doing really, really long, long events like multi-day bike packing. He's kind of gotten into being a competitive bike packer. He did that alt tour last year, or during the tour he rode kind of the whole course self-supported and
transfers and everything.
Notorious for doing that tour. The pictures of him doing it in Birkenstocks. Like he's just an interesting guy. But 4th at Leadville.
I think if it's a hard day, he's in for it.
Right.
We saw it at Unbound, right? He made it into that break, and he looked good for it as well. So, there wasn't too much else crazy bizarre on his bike.
Saddle's like completely slammed forward, which looks kind of funky as well.
Probably to help with that down.
And then the lefty fork on the Cannondales doesn't help it look more normal, but it just makes it look more obscure.
And then his chainring, like he one-upped even Keegan. What did he have? It was a 42?
42.
Oh.
Monster
and
chainring.
I saw somewhere that like Keegan even like quoted Lachlan of like, it's not dumb unless you have to get off and walk or something like that. Like, as long as you can turn it over.
It's reasonable. Probably not for me. Maybe not for the average us mere mortals, but for those guys, it seems to be working.
Do you think like whenever they choose that, it's like a thing of, well, that means I can't go slow. Like you have to go a certain speed.
There's absolutely a psychology to it of, talking yourself into
there
it.
were some steep sections on those climbs.
Oh, yeah.
Because think about it, you're climbing up a hill, and you're just reaching for a few easier gears as you go up.
They don't exist.
Yeah. And even if you don't want to, you're going to reach for that easier one, and my cadence pick up, I'll go the same speed.
Yeah.
You don't have that option now.
It forces you into it.
I mean, one of our good buddies that we've raced with for years, one of the first times they ran the Lost and Found gravel race, he did Lost and Found on a cyclocross bike. We didn't really have gravel bikes when it first kicked off. And what he had was he had a road group hanging out that he slid over to the cross bike. So he did Lost and Found on a standard full-size 5339 double with a standard 1128 in the rear. And he got third. And I have to say, half the reason he got third is because we got to the climbs and I got to shift down and he couldn't. So he just left me behind because that's what the gears were. There is absolutely something to be said for like, if you don't have a choice, I guess you're going to pedal it.
Yeah.
It's kind of the idea of like single speed competing and stuff, right? Like you can do it. just you don't get a choice. So definitely interesting. Last bike.
I'll touch on Lachlan's one more. 21.6 pounds for the total weight of it.
With a suspension fork and mountain bike tires.
Did he have a dropper on his too?
I don't remember.
Because there was a few people that were running droppers. A lot of people were hard posting this one.
Yeah, it's a big weight savings there.
Yeah.
But that's impressive. 21.6 pounds.
Yeah, light bike for sure.
I don't know. That's full suspension bikes nowadays. So
something like the Epic World Cup and stuff. It's true. It's true. But they don't have piggly adjustable stems on the front. They're ultralight carbon stems or ultra alloy stems. Well, the last really standout bike that we couldn't help but comment on was what Dylan Johnson chose to use. I think kind of we were talking about Keegan running narrow handlebars. There's aerodynamic advantage, maybe get in TT mode. Jack, what did Dylan do?
He put drop bars on a cross-country mountain bike.
That he did. And one thing I observed and thought about is Dylan's riding SRAM Axis, and that Axis wireless shifting ecosystem, it all talks to each other. So you can pair up road shifters with mountain derailleurs, mountain shifters with road derailleurs. It all works together, as far as communicating and cable stuff. You had to have, make sure, like, does this pull enough cable to move this derailleur correctly? The wireless access stuff just eliminates that. So it makes it neat. We're entering an era where there can be like a lot of cool experimentation. Dylan's riding a cross-country hardtail mountain bike, suspension fork, and put drop handlebars on it. It's awesome. Super cool. So cool to see. So, Jack, what was his setup?
So you had the Fox 100mm fork on the front, 2.2-inch wide Conti Race Kings, 36 tooth chainring on there, so nothing too crazy.
He probably followed the manufacturer's maximum guidelines and didn't
Yeah,
put anything bigger
staying
on.
within the lines.
And then, yeah, they had the SRAM Force axis shifters on there on the drop handlebars, 400mm wide bars, 70mm stem, and his bike came out to 22 pounds as well, so
Pretty light.
some pretty crazy
Pretty
light
light.
bikes
He
out
was
there.
running a dropper post too.
Okay.
That's like pretty good, like
That
weight
is.
with a
Yeah,
dropper.
absolutely.
And again, that's where the SRAM really stands out, is the drop bar shifters can match up to even a dropper post.
He
We can
didn't
feel
have the Axis dropper post though.
No,
He was running a Fox one with a lever on the drop bar.
I wonder if
Yeah.
the total system weight was lighter compared to like the battery on the Axis post.
With how analytical he is, I would say it probably is.
That's probably
I also
the choice
wonder there if it's a sponsorship thing.
Fox,
He's got a Fox
potentially.
deal. It could be. Yeah, I don't know.
So I
what his
wonder where
deal
that
is.
line's drawn is of suspension
Right,
of your, obviously
right.
the rear shock is a full suspension and fork.
When he's riding for Factor, so I often wonder, like a guy like Dylan, he may not have a drivetrain sponsor at all,
Right.
and he's just more running the equipment that comes on the bikes. But he may have a Fox and or a SRAM sponsorship that has certain limitations. Also, some of these guys are willing to like forget the sponsorship. This is the equipment I think I need to win this
Right.
event, which is kind of fun to see too. Not just like, oh, this stuff's the best. Like, what do we see? Alex Howes at
he can backfire too.
backfire. Yeah, Alex Howes at Unbound. Is that Unbound?
Complaining about the muck off sealant.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not directly a sponsor, but it's what do we call it? As I think somebody called it reverse influencing or uninfluencing. It's interesting era we're in where you don't just have to talk all highly about every.
Which
single
I think it was probably just a bad tire decision.
probably
But take whatever he says.
muck off stealing tire decision. Whatever.
An interesting thing with Dylan's setup too is I think him and a lot of the other guys were running tire inserts.
Yeah.
He did have those Tubolito, I believe Tubolito, right? Yeah, the Tubolito tire inserts in there.
Yeah.
And I think Keegan had some inserts as well. I think most of those top guys are running tire inserts now to help reduce that potential for pinch flat. Because there's so many issues. We saw on the coverage that Russell Finsterwald flatted at one point, was able to air it back up. But that's time lost.
That's
Like he got
time
dropped
lost.
from the lead group and
Yep.
had to chase back on for a long time.
That's what Lachlan was saying too. He flatted pretty early on.
Okay.
Chased quickly to get back on. Remember in his interview he was saying he had to make a decision of chasing on now to give himself a chance for the win, to like get back into lead group, or work back slowly to have like probably a better day overall. He kind of said, fuck it, I'm going to give it all the beans right now to put myself for a chance to go for the win in this race. But all because of a flat though, so.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's always better to not flat than to be able to fix a flat quickly, right? And the debate, one of the first brands to launch inserts was Cushcore. And I remember when Cushcore first came out, people were like, rotational mass, that's like everybody's least favorite thing in the world. This is weight that actually really matters. It's not just overall weight, it's rotational mass. You feel that stuff. It's going to change how the tire feels and how it acts. And we're seeing an adoption, I think, especially in the world of racing and gravel. We're seeing it in some cross-country stuff. Hear a little bit about it even at like road in the World Tour, like EF using Vittoria's, allegedly using their tire insert that acts almost as a run flat.
With the tubeless, yeah.
With the tubeless. And it's you are adding weight, but if you're dramatically reducing risk of flats, we say it all the time.
Yeah.
I'd rather spend 5 extra watts all day long and not be sitting on the side of the road.
I think there's also the potential of offsetting the weight because you don't have to run as burly of a sidewall on your tire.
It's a good argument too.
So you could get very similar to like a heavier duty tire with a light tire and an insert.
Yep. That is valid. Yeah, and I think that was an argument Cushcore was making too. Is like people are running much lighter weight casing tires with our tire liner. It's almost the equivalent in weight to a heavy duty tire, which you're going to get really good ride feel. You probably get more cuts, but the cuts aren't going to they aren't going to end your day. So from a racing standpoint, yeah. I think for the average rider, inserts are probably a smart call because nobody likes fixing flats. Nobody wants to fix flats. Some of us are bad at fixing flats, Dynaplugs are great. We love Dynaplug, but I'd rather not have to pull over and use a Dynaplug.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about Vanderpool's crash and it costing him about 12 seconds. He didn't have a flat. Imagine if he had.
He wouldn't have won.
He wouldn't have won.
No,
that amount of
way.
time is the difference between winning and losing or being there and not being there. So I think inserts, there's a win for inserts, right? And inserts only work if you're running tubeless.
Mm-hmm.
So another win for tubeless too.
Just another plug for tubeless.
Got to keep that tubeless plug on. Come see us at Mammoth. We'll talk to you. Mm-hmm. We'll convert you to tubeless road.
Boom.
Yeah, definitely cool stuff there.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on the coverage from Leadville. I first watched the highlights, but all from the helicopter shot, which was, I don't think they had last year.
I do not think they had helicopter coverage last year.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
You got great. Different parts of the entire race. It seemed like the helicopter's up the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And just the footage you got, the actual, being able to watch the race play out in the more remote sections was probably never been done before. Mm-hmm. It was really impressive to me. And it's hopefully will make the other races in the series sort of step up and improve their coverage and see that across all the races in the U.S.
And we are slowly seeing a transition in the U.S. for racing as far as having more coverage.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the NCL Crit Series, they're now on GCN Plus, so you can go on there and watch them live even.
Yeah.
Which is pretty incredible. I think all the promoters are just realizing, like, that's how things have to start going.
Yeah. It makes it more approachable. I mean, like, coming up and racing, like, it's all trial by fire. You got to be confident enough and willing to go to these events. You got to find out when and where the events happen, and that in itself is not easy. Mm-hmm. You get some live video coverage and people can watch it and start to understand what's going on. I mean, I'm hopeful that it kind of opens the door to more people getting into racing in the U.S.
I think it makes it more functional as far as, like, having professional cyclists in the U.S. now too,
Sure.
right? Because if you are having coverage, like, if people can get on and watch you, you're going to be getting more sponsors.
Yeah.
People are going to be putting more money into it just because of the exposure that comes with it.
100%.
So I think it is going to be really good for American cycling in the long run.
Well, then, good job to Lifetime Grand Prix, and the coverage was awesome of Leadville. We love seeing it.
Really
more of that.
impressive. Every
Every other promoter, take notes. If you can pull off that kind of thing, do it. We're loving it. Yeah.
Agreed.
And I think that sort of wraps up our episode. If you have any questions that you would like to see us answer on the next episode, go ahead and leave them down in the comments, and we'll go ahead and answer those next week. And I think we can go ahead and sign off. The burritos were good, the beers were good, and we talked a lot about bikes.
Yeah, cheers, boys.
Until
Successful
next time.
podcast. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in.
See you next time.
Yep, tune back in for episode 3.